She grabbed his arm and whispered with tears in her eyes, "If you get on that jet, you won't come back." Security shoved her aside like trash. The billionaire laughed, got on board, and took off. 37 minutes later, a fireball lit up the sky. His $70 million jet exploded midair. But here's the part that no one expected. He survived. And what he did next changed everything. The airport runway shimmered beneath the early morning heat. A private jet, sleek, silver, and proud, sat poised on the tarmac, engines humming low like a beast ready to pounce. Damon Creed, dressed in a tailored black Armani suit and holding a triple-locked briefcase, stepped out of the armored SUV flanked by two black-clad security agents. He adjusted his cufflink, his Rolex catching the sun like a mirror, and didn't glance back as he walked toward the stairs. The deal waiting for him in Washington was worth $9.8 billion. Signing it would make Creed Tech the largest private defense supplier in the country. He wasn't a man used to second-guessing anything. Then he saw her. She stood right beside the chain-link gate, feet bare on the gravel, her hands gripped around the metal bars. Her gray hair was wild, tangled like roots torn from the earth. Her dress was stained, wrinkled, hanging loosely on her fragile frame. But her eyes were fixed on him, like she'd been waiting a lifetime for this moment. "Mr. Creed," she called out, voice coarse but clear. "Don't get on that plane." The voice froze something in his chest. Not fear, but confusion. He blinked at her, barely slowing his pace until one of the guards stepped between them. "She's been here since 4 a.m., the agent muttered. "Crazy woman. We were about to move her." Damon waved a hand. "Give me a second." He approached the gate, the jet rumbling softly behind him. She didn't back away. Her hands trembled against the fence, but her eyes stayed calm. There wasn't madness in them. There was sorrow. "You don't know me," she said, softer now. "But I know you. I saw your name written in smoke and fire. I saw a sky burning red. You were falling, and the world watched you vanish." Damon looked at her with an amused smile, arms crossed. "What are you, a psychic?" "I don't need to be," she whispered. "Sometimes we see what no one else wants to see. And sometimes we speak even when no one listens." His smile dropped ever so slightly. There was something odd in the way she spoke. Too precise, too grounded to be a hallucination. But this was ridiculous. He'd dealt with dozens of protests, death threats, even an attempted bombing. Nothing stopped him. Nothing ever touched him. "Lady," he said with a dry chuckle, "I've heard worse predictions from my investors. If I don't board this jet, I'm leaving $9 billion on the table. You think I'm going to give that up because of your dream?" Her eyes flickered. "You won't return from this flight, not as yourself, not whole." Before he could respond, his assistant jogged up behind him, holding a tablet. "Mr. Creed, we're behind schedule. The Pentagon call is waiting mid-flight. They'll disconnect if we don't get airborne." Damon nodded, turned back to the woman, and said, "I'll take my chances." But as he walked away, she spoke again. Not louder, just firmer. "Damon." He stopped. His name. She hadn't said it before. He turned slowly. "How do you know my name?" "I know many names," she said, eyes glistening. "I remember the names of the boys your company sent into deserts to test drones that hadn't been perfected. I remember the names of their mothers. I remember my son's name." His breath hitched, only for a second. Then it hardened again. "That's not on me," he said coldly. "No," she replied, "but it's in you." That was it. No threats, no shouting. Just those words. Security moved in. She didn't resist. One of the agents grabbed her arm too roughly, and she stumbled to her knees. She didn't cry. She just looked at Damon one last time, through the fence, through the noise, through the years of power and denial. "I tried," she whispered. He boarded the jet, fastened his belt, took the coffee handed to him by a young flight attendant, opened his tablet. The conference line blinked, waiting. The jet climbed, the clouds cleared, and then the world cracked open. At exactly 37 minutes into the flight, just as he began speaking into the secure channel, a low rumble started near the tail. The cabin shook. The lights blinked. Then everything flashed white. A concussive burst flung him against the cabin wall. Screams followed, then static, then silence. Flames swallowed the sky. The jet disintegrated over Blue Ridge Valley. The world believed Damon Creed was dead. He wasn't supposed to survive. The investigators said the explosion tore through the fuselage faster than a human eye could register. No black box was found, no intact remains. Just ash, steel, bone fragments. 42 people were declared dead. Damon Creed was listed first, but 48 hours later in the damp, quiet woods of Blue Ridge Valley, a truck driver named Henry Fields slammed his brakes when he saw a barefoot man, blood-soaked, disoriented, staggering down the middle of the road. Drenched in soot, half his scalp torn, one arm limp at his side, the man looked like a ghost clawing its way out of the grave. Henry called 911, but no one answered. The area had poor reception, so he loaded the stranger into his cab and drove 30 minutes to a small-town clinic in the middle of nowhere. No flashy signage, no federal agents. Just a nurse with tired eyes and calloused hands who didn't ask too many questions. They didn't know who he was, and neither did he. For 5 days he lay in a hospital bed, hooked to machines, mouth too swollen to speak, head wrapped in gauze. The staff called him John Doe. No ID, no phone, nothing. Just a burned wallet with a melted zipper and a single half-destroyed card, Creed Tech Platinum Access. The nurse who stayed with him the most was Sierra James, 34, widow, 2 jobs, 1 son. She never asked about the burns or the muscle spasms or the night terrors that made him scream in his sleep. She just brought soup, changed his bandages, sat in silence when he stared at the wall for hours, trying to put pieces of something back together. By day 8, he could walk again. By day 10, he started talking. Simple words. Thank you. Water. Pain. He didn't remember who he was. Not at first, but flashes came in dreams. A silver jet. A soft voice. The word Damon echoed like thunder through the static. One night, Sierra sat beside his bed, reading an old paperback. You ever wonder if some people just start over? He asked. She didn't look up. Every day. You think they deserve it? She finally looked at him. Depends on what they do with it. Later that week, Elijah, Sierra's 9-year-old son, didn't come home from school. His backpack was found in the dirt behind the grocery store. A white van with no plates had been seen nearby. No witnesses. The town sheriff filed a report and quietly advised Sierra not to dig too deep. That night, John dreamt of fire again. But this time, it wasn't the plane. It was a lab, a boy, a drone spinning out of control, and a signature on a file. D. Creed. He woke up in a cold sweat. He looked in the mirror for the first time in weeks. The beard was thick now, scars lined his cheek. His hair was matted, but the eyes, those cold, calculating, unflinching eyes, were familiar. He remembered everything. Damon Creed hadn't died. He had been erased, and now whoever had tried to finish the job had come for the only person who ever showed him kindness. They took her son to send a message, but Damon had already gotten the message. Now he was going to answer. Damon disappeared that night, left nothing but a thank you note, a $50,000 cashier's check stuffed in a brown envelope, and a hospital gown folded on the cot. He drove 2 states north under a fake ID, found a storage unit registered under a shell company he once used to launder campaign funds, and opened it. Inside was a burner laptop, 2 untraceable phones, a backup server drive, and a small black pistol. He got to work. First, he hacked into the Creed Tech internal servers. Something only he could do. He saw what they'd buried. Flight logs rewritten, crew assignments altered, emergency response delayed. The signatures were damning. Jonas Vell, his COO, had signed off on the flight plan just 30 minutes before takeoff. That wasn't protocol. That was a death warrant. Jonas, the friend he mentored. The man he once called brother. Second, Damon traced the van, pulled surveillance data from traffic lights, ATM cameras, store security systems, built a pattern. A warehouse outside Baltimore, private security, no legal name on the lease. The kind of place used by men who never want to be found. He waited 3 days, watched, measured, counted exits, guards, smoke breaks. On the fourth night, Damon Creed, still bruised, still broken, walked straight through the back entrance, put a gun to the first guard's temple, and whispered, "You're going to let that child go. Now." They didn't argue. Not because of the gun, but because of his voice. It was the voice of a man who'd lost the fear of death and found purpose instead. He carried Elijah out himself. The boy's wrists were tied, his face was pale. But when he looked up and whispered, "John," Damon smiled for the first time in weeks. "No, kid," he said softly. "My name's Damon." The next day, the entire world saw him. Damon Creed walked into a live-streamed press conference at Creed Tech's headquarters, stepped behind the podium in his burned suit, and faced the camera. "Reports of my death," he began, "have been exaggerated." The room exploded in gasps. Jonas Vell was arrested 3 hours later. The contracts were frozen. Stock plummeted. And Damon, for once, didn't care. He liquidated a third of his assets, sold the yacht, shut down all international drone testing sites, established the Tilly Foundation, named after Margaret, the woman who warned him, a woman whose son died in his company's carelessness, a woman who had no reason to save him but did anyway. And then he went to find her. It took weeks. She didn't have a phone. Lived out of shelters, churches, food lines. When he finally saw her, standing in a soup kitchen, handing out bread with those same trembling hands, he froze. She looked up and for a moment didn't recognize him. But then her eyes widened. Not in fear, not even in surprise. Just a quiet kind of peace. He stepped forward. "You told me I wouldn't come back the same." She nodded once. "You didn't." He reached into his coat. Not for money, not for apologies, just for her hand. "I remember your son's name now," he said. "And I remember yours." She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just held his hand. Outside, the cameras swarmed. The world wanted headlines. But inside, in that quiet kitchen, a woman who had lost everything looked into the eyes of the man who had once signed her son's death. And she forgave him.